there, Arma here. Welcome to today's video. Today we'll be covering mental health awareness from different perspectives. Today I'm joined by two guests, Joey and his friend Meat, who are willing to share and talk about their experience today with dealing with NPD, also known as narcissistic personality disorder, from their separate point of views. So, welcome Joey and me, and thank you for wanting to take the time to be here to spread awareness on NPD. Okay, so if you guys don't mind, yeah, just go ahead and reintroduce yourselves and you can express your personal experience with dealing with NPD, like basically your position on it.
Uh, okay, I guess I'll go first.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm 20 years old. I'm still living with my family at the moment, and
Oh, don't forget your name.
it
This is
recently
Joey. This is
started.
Joey.
Yeah, I'm Joey, 20 years old, still living with my family at the moment, and had a pretty rough upbringing. A lot of details I probably can't go through in a video like this, but
Mm-hmm.
basically, ever since starting to learn about NPD after a recent really horrible experience with a fling with somebody, I come to the conclusion like matching a lot of things with a lot of family members and like past friends and exes behaviors and even like some of the family members that I still live with, interact with on a regular basis, that I've most likely been around a lot of people with NPD. Of course, it's hard to say because, there's a lot of stigma around NPD, so it's not only hard to talk about, but a lot of people profit off of like making kind of like popcorn style content on the internet about it, like, oh,
Yeah.
here's the sorry symptoms of this, and here's like, and it leads to a lot of people kind of assuming that way more people are narcissistic than they actually are, and
Okay.
so they use that term way too loosely. But because it's hard to get exact statistics on how many narcissistic people end up not only going to therapy, but also going on their own, and furthermore, staying in therapy, I personally consider a lot of these people I've dealt with narcissists, at least by my own, like, by the information that I've gathered. I've went through a long period of a few months of daily research for a few hours. I asked a lot of questions to my friend over here who has been diagnosed with NPD, knows way more about it than I do. Talked to a lot of like people in cluster B personality disorder groups online. Even talked to my own therapist about it.
Mm.
But my dad and my older sister most likely have NPD. They exhibit most, if not all, of the traits. I've had a long-term best friend for like a while, a little over a year, I was really enmeshed with that had it and discarded me out of the blue. It was a pretty bad situation. And I've had like two extremely abusive exes that exhibited a lot of the same behavior to like pretty severe degrees. Now, Meet, you can take the stage.
I'm Meat. I've been diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder, and I
Okay.
am friends with Joey. So my perspective on it is, I am a very large advocate for self-advocacy and boundaries with other people. I think it is incredibly important to have awareness for people that do not have narcissistic personality disorder but are interacting with those that do, equipping them with the knowledge to interact with people that have it safely is important. It is key to keep everybody safe, comfortable in a relationship, consensual with boundaries, because it is very easy to cross a boundary. It is very easy to push a boundary, and it can't be
Right.
tolerated. It can't be allowed. So, teaching people how to advocate for themselves and set strong, confident boundaries with themselves helps them from becoming the person targeted in a situation by someone looking to manipulate them. It prevents them from having that target on their back. And I think it's very important that that knowledge is out there and given to other people.
Yeah, like wow. I couldn't have said it better myself. Like that's why I'm glad to that you guys took the time to come out to like speak on your different perspectives because I
I
think
appreciate you having us on. I
oh
really
yeah.
do. It's pretty cool.
Oh, well, thank you. And I appreciate you guys being here more than ever. So, thank you for sharing that, guys. So I wanna start off with getting into you guys' friendship, right? Because I think a lot of people would be like, well, one person's diagnosed with NDP and they're friends with someone who, isn't, diagnosed with NDP, how does that like relationship work, or how does that dynamic work? So I guess I'll just start off with asking, so how did you guys meet, and how were you able to develop a friendship even though you guys have like different experiences when it comes to NPD?
Can I talk about this like really
You
briefly?
absolutely
Like,
can. I will
okay.
keep in mind, Joey, you're going to talk. I want him to probably speak first on most of these questions because
Mm-hmm.
this is about advocacy and about knowledge.
Right.
I am not a victim of people with narcissistic personality disorder. I am somebody with narcissistic personality disorder.
Okay.
So
Okay.
any of the experiences coming first should probably be from Joey's perspective more so than mine, and then me kind of bouncing off of his perspective on the topic because
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
important to hear what victims of abuse, because it
Right.
is in a lot of cases it is abuse. It's more than
Yeah.
just arguing or fighting or being a bit of a sometimes it is abuse, and it
Mm-hmm.
is something that the victim needs a spotlight on in this situation. So Joey, you can talk first pretty much
Yeah.
every
Yeah.
question.
Okay.
So far, unfortunately, we've yet to meet in real life. We live in completely different countries. I met him in a server at some point, like November 6th, 2021, if I remember the date correctly, and just started off in like a voice call talking about like different things. And I remember our personalities matched a fair bit. Like we found each other pretty interesting,
Mm-hmm.
and we like added each other. And I don't remember the exact way it flowed, but I remember he told me like pretty upfront, like, "Hey, I have narcissistic personality disorder." Like he feels the need most often, if not always, to tell people that he's like associating with that. Hey, this might be something you might be uncomfortable with. Basically, it's kind of funny because this man basically comes with a warning sign, like a caution thing,
Right.
you know.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also like pretty respectful and like I really like appreciate that. Um, Especially because at the time I didn't even know anything really about narcissism. I was one of like pretty much the majority of people that just think, oh, it just means someone who's really egotistical and might be like pretty negative to other people. He actually, after a recent like really botched relationship this year, like early this year, I was like in a really vulnerable spot, and I was being like heavily manipulated and strung along like a kind of cat and mouse chase with someone with most likely NPD that was being pretty destructive. I don't want to. It's still kind of a fresh wound. I don't want to
Right.
elaborate too
Right.
much on it, but
Definitely.
he was along with me like every step of the way, and I was telling him about everything going on. And I think I vaguely remember it was a lot of details, a lot of things to recall, but I
Mm-hmm.
vaguely remember him being how I figured out like, oh, this is like a pretty clear signs all in all of like narcissism, like pretty telltale signs of narcissism right here.
Mm-hmm.
And that was what put me on like starting to research it as much as possible. I will say, if any of you out there want to look into narcissism, this might sound like I'm exaggerating or being hyperbolic, but genuinely, look into like 10 sources, 10 different sources on each question you have. There's a
Mm.
lot of conflicting data out there, and there's a lot of people, even professionals, even clinicians, that disagree on a good amount of things. Come to your own conclusions. It took me a while to understand most, if not all of it. And even then, you know, even a lot of narcissists have different experiences. I talked to a bunch of people that supposedly have been professionally diagnosed with NPD in their own groups. Like I was basically interviewing these people like online about this stuff, and
Mm-hmm.
even then, a lot of them said kind of contradictory things. They're obviously going to have like different experiences, but
Right.
it's not always wildly different. I'll say that much. With NPD, it seems like it's kind of surprisingly cut and dry a lot of the time. I feel like
Mm-hmm.
maybe Meat can elaborate a little on that.
Yeah. Sure.
So being friends with Joey, I'd say it was a pretty natural process for me. I can make friends relatively easy. It's keeping them around that I have difficulty with in a lot of cases because I have a very preferential style of conversation and very few people meet the criteria. And he just happened to be one of them. We had really good conversational flow. I enjoy his company. I find them intelligent. I like to be around them and have these conversations. I pretty much only exclusively have like heavier discussions or just worldly topics, pretty much exclusively with Joey as a result of that interaction. So for me, it's filling a need. He fulfills a need for me, and that need is a social interaction that I can get from very few people that I meet in my day-to-day life, if any of them at all, ever.
Okay.
So that need is fulfilled for me, and in order for me to get a need back, and I would like to like clarify, like I am probably one of the exceptions to this rule where it's a give and a take. Like I have to get, he gets something back out of the interaction, I get something. Because I know that if I don't give something back, it can lead down kind of that road of like, all right, well, maybe I can take a little more, maybe I can take a little more. So I actively avoid those things. Those are things that I actively avoid doing, and that's how I've been able to maintain, I'd say, a pretty healthy friendship with Joey, because I do care about his well-being to an extent. I am protective because he is in my circle. He is like one of mine. I cultivated a friendship, so I care.
Right.
I care about him. I care about how he's doing, if someone's done something to him, whatever. And I also consider myself an enjoyer of the human species as a whole. I like us. I think we're cool. I think we're pretty neat. As far as animals go, we're pretty cool. So there's a respect. I respect very few people on the same level that I do myself. But he's up there. And I obviously, it sounds like I'm blowing smoke up his ass because he's in the call, or because he's in the call with me. But that's how I've maintained the friendship, is because I don't gain any long-term benefit aside from his company out of our friendship, it's one of the very few times where I'm not, like, I wouldn't say that I'm looking for something out of it. I just, what I'm looking for is the company, basically, and that.
So, like, I'm glad you said that, me, because one of my questions, well, two of my questions were, first, like, how do you guys keep a balanced friendship, and then you answered the question that I had was like, did you feel like you guys bond was more of a favor for a favor, or do you like generally care for each other? And
At this point, I would say that I care, because most narcissists aren't necessarily emotionless. I am. I don't feel a whole lot of anything at all.
okay.
Little bits and pieces here and there, bits and bobs. Yeah, I get a little bit of something now and then, a little bit of the juice, as one
Yeah.
does. So I would say that I would care about him at this point. Not to like, and very interestingly enough, me and him in a conversation with this, I do care. I do have an exaggerated care for both animals and children.
Okay.
I have empathy. I have empathy and sympathy towards animals and children both.
Would you say, because when people think of narcissism, they think of lack of empathy? So, me, would you say you have empathy but you lack it?
I do not have a single care in the world for your average everyday person.
Okay.
They are. This sounds very horrible considering the way that everyone usually jokes about it and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
They are as close to me as video game NPCs as you could possibly get.
Okay.
Like those little video game buttons in the bottom with the dialogue that goes skip dialogue, skip dialogue. Every time I talk to one of them, that's all I can imagine. Skip dialogue, skip dialogue. Like, I don't want to talk to you. Get out of here. Okay. When I talk to people that I do like, that are on that level of like, all right, I see you as a human being. I see you as a person. I can talk to you. I'll have a conversation. I'll sit there and I'll have that discussion. So I
can I ask you something? So because I feel like when you say that, I get the feeling, at least personally speaking, that most people feel that way. But then, so let's say you heard of a tragedy on the news. Somebody killed a bunch of people, a bunch of random people. You don't know any of these people. You don't know the criminal nor the people that were tragically killed.
Yep.
Would your reaction, because most people's reaction would be maybe not cognitive empathy, but at least emotional, innate sympathy, like, oh, other people of my species died. Would your reaction be feeling bad for the victims, or feeling primarily angry at the criminal? Because a lot of
angry at the criminal, and that's there's a strong sense of justice there, and that again, I also do. This is relevant, I suppose. I do have autism spectrum disorder.
Okay.
So I have a very, very strong compulsory sense of moral justice. However, the NPD does affect that moral justice, because the morality is not what the average person is morality. Or what morality is the average person. It is to me. My morality is where my moral justice lies.
Okay.
So it's not within the bounds of what a legal law would be. It's within my own bounds of what I consider to be morally just.
Okay.
So if somebody kills a bunch
That's
of people, first and foremost, I'm pissed off that somebody broke the rules and killed a bunch of people, because that's against my rules. You can't do that. That's against the rules. You broke the rules. Therefore, I'm mad.
That's really interesting. Okay.
That's
So
It always ties back to you.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt, but
No, you go ahead. My bad.
okay. So going back to you guys, like friendship, how long would you say it took for you guys to like truly open up to each other? To feel
I'd
comfortable?
say I don't have anything to hide from anybody. That's how I keep myself accountable. If
Okay.
someone has a question, I answer it. That's how I keep myself. It's the only way. It's the only way. It really is the only way. If it's the only way to not be a
Right.
when you have every impulse in your body telling you on a regular basis to be a jerk, like you have to like openly say, "Hey, I feel like being a jerk."
Okay.
All the time. Like it's the only way.
Okay.
I'd say personally. Oh, sorry. Continue.
No, I'm sorry, Joey. Go ahead.
Were you gonna ask something like adding on to that, or
Oh
are you
no,
just gonna?
I was just gonna see what your answer was towards how long you felt that it took to.
Well, so him and I have been like speaking since November 6th, almost a year ago. I'd say I'm still personally weary of him, and I've told him this multiple times before. He says he doesn't like he's okay with it. He likes that fact. He appreciates it. But
well, no, it's safe.
It's mainly. Wait, what?
It's safe. That's what I said.
Yeah, it's safe.
The first time I said it's safe.
I will say it's the fact that I've been heavily abused for most, if not all of my life, at least like on and off, by people with NPD. Not like I still feel sympathy for a lot of people with NPD because at least most of the time from my research, it's not something people are born with usually. It's something they develop.
Right.
And so, especially with the amount of like emotional turmoil that comes with it for most people who struggle with NPD, nobody deserves to be a narcissist, basically. It's not like the ego, don't let the ego fool you. They're pretty miserable a lot of the time. And so I have sympathy. I can humanize those people. Even with my own abusers, I can look past the abuse, not in a traumatic fawning response kind of way, but more so in like, despite all of this, I wish you were different. I wish you were better about these things about your own life.
Mm-hmm.
But still, I've been in a lot of relationships, both familial, platonic, and romantic, where these types of people can stick with you through rough situations. They can still easily, stab you in the back. They can prove their loyalty, their trust, their love, their admiration to you as many times as you want. It's still possible for them to mistreat you and end up abusing you and leaving you without any closure, scratching your head, losing your mind for months, if not years on end.
Right.
That's all I'm going to say. So even with him,
course.
as much as I enjoy his company, and as much as I think I like respect him, and I think he's like one of the smartest and funniest people I've met, and I feel like a friendly connection with him, I still think a lot of the time, like, he might be, I don't know, he might be like abusing people behind my back. Maybe one day, like maybe in a few months or a few years, I'll find that out. It's not out of the realm of possibility for me anymore.
Okay, so you're kind of on the lines of like you're still cautious even though you have.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Oh yeah.
Okay. Well, me. How do you personally feel that you being diagnosed with NDP, that based on what Joey just said, of still being cautious and aware of like the traits that you do have in your friendship?
I feel very positively about it.
Okay.
I think it is incredibly good behavior to have because, like I said, I am the exception and not the rule. Most people with narcissistic personality disorder that are looking to hurt you are looking to hurt you. That's what they want to do. That is what they are out to do, and they will do everything in their power to make sure that you don't know that. They don't want you to know that. That's the whole point. They don't want you to know until it's too late. So that's what I said about holding me accountable. For example, his weariness, like he said, he made a really good point. For all he knows, I could be abusing people behind his back. My counter to that, and my way to make him feel secure in his friendship, is to introduce him to my friends, or like introduce him to my family, or let him interact with people in life. And it's those things that are like, here, now that I know this is a concern, I can provide you this security, but keep this concern when you're interacting with other people, because it is a rightful concern to have. Because when you are interacting with other people with NPD, you're looking out for yourself, but you can also do an extra step, and you can look out for the other people around them too. If you see something, say something. It's one of those sayings that I really like a lot, and I really appreciate the person who came up with that. If you see something, say something. Be that somebody getting emotionally abused, be that somebody being physically abused, sexually abused, whoever it may be. If you see something, say something. If you're wrong, you're wrong. If you're right, you've just saved somebody.
That's one thing I want to add real quick. I don't know how many people believe in this, but it feels pretty frighteningly common, because in a lot of, I feel like in big part due to media influence, a lot of people's ideas about romance and like friendships and relationships in general can be pretty overly romanticized and oversimplified. And I constantly see the sentiment that like, oh, I'm such a good friend. I love my friend so much. Like, I would help my friend cover up a murder. I would do anything for my friends, no matter who they hurt, what they did. I'd help them rob a bank. That's horrible. That's one of the worst types of friendships to have. If you have a friend like that, you should run away from them. That is the opposite of a good friend. If you have a friend, they're not holding you accountable, and they're excusing you for whatever horrible thing you're doing just because you're friends. That's the worst friend you can have. Yeah. That is the worst friend you can have in your entire life.
Yeah, it's
that's all.
Definitely
that's all I want to add to that.
It's definitely always good to be cautious, like you said, and like you mentioned me. If something's wrong, you gotta speak up and say something.
Yeah, see something, say something. You see something, say something. Doesn't matter who it is, doesn't matter where it is, doesn't matter how it is. You see something that your gut tells you is wrong, you say something to somebody.
Yeah.
Okay, so
because funnily enough, sorry. You know what? I would just end up.
No, go ahead. Express yourself.
Because like a couple of people that I've been dating, like, well, only two of them most likely are narcissistic. Whenever I talk to their friends seem to have pretty shaky moral compasses. That's all I'm gonna say, is that whenever I would like tell them about the things that they're doing, they would sometimes like either very reluctantly confront them about it and take very like half-hearted apologies and like promises of improving their behavior, or they wouldn't at all, and they'd tell me like, oh, what am I supposed to do? Like, what do I have to do with it? Even though they're some of the closest friends of theirs. And if whenever I've told them that I'm taking steps to combat that, just not even in the sense of revenge, but like trying to alert everyone that I can contact in those narcissists' lives about their bad behavior, they talk to me as if I'm somebody that's like being obsessive. So a lot of the time, those types of people with NPD, the abusive ones specifically, they like to surround themselves with people like that who'd be very reluctant to take action. That's all I want to
add. Do you have a take on that or no?
I agree with him wholeheartedly.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Wholeheartedly.
Okay. So, I want to go on and continue like talking about you guys' friendship. So I will say, let me ask you both this: how would you guys say you're different when it comes to expressing emotions?
This is difficult because I really don't. I have a farce emotions. I farce like emotions in my face and like communicating obviously for social reasons. But really the only emotional cue I have is being irritated about things, being passively angry about everything all the time. It's kind of the only way. Funnily enough, the anger makes me a more positive person.
I'm interested in that. How? Well, like I'm just asking because I don't know. Why would you say that the emotions you express more easily are anger? Like why isn't like with people with NPD, why isn't they can't express like full happiness? Like, is it a trauma thing or?
It can be for some people. It can be for some people. It absolutely can be. Some people are just born like that. I'm personally, I was just born how I am. I've always been this way. It's just been a consistent thing in my life since I could remember. There's just kind of been nothing there. But I do find anger incredibly motivating. It is probably the most motivating thing I could imagine there to be, and therefore it motivates me to be a more positive person, because a lot of the things that make me angry are things that I desire change for, that I don't like.
Okay.
I feel like a pretty important thing to add to that, though, really, really important, is that again, he is the exception and not the rule in this
Oh
scenario.
yeah.
Because a lot of narcissists that I've talked to and a lot of the data that I've looked at, from my conversations with Meat, he seems pretty like insightful about these things, but he does tend to be pretty self-referential, and that can kind of be misleading to a lot of people since there already is the stigma that oversimplifies narcissists to make them seem emotionless. They're not all emotionless. Most of them are pretty emotional, especially from a lot of the ones that I've talked to. They're just really good at hiding their emotions. And because of how much they tend to neglect their inner world and constantly run away from it, they oftentimes have alexithymia, which is the inability to discern between your emotions. And beyond that, obviously, they think they develop a kind of belief, however loose or firm, that showing vulnerability is either always weakness or performative to gain something.
Okay.
So that's a big notable thing to know. I am personally, when it comes to me expressing emotions, it can be all over the place. I've been suspecting recently I might have borderline personality disorder, which is kind of interesting. It would explain a lot because relationships in whatever kind between people with NPD and BPD are sadly common. They're pretty toxic. They're pretty unhealthy, and it tends to be a cycle for a lot of people on both sides. People with borderline personality disorder tend to be pretty easily taken advantage of by people with NPD because both share a deep abandonment wound, but
Okay.
they go about it in different ways. For people with borderline, tend to be the ones, at least from my information. I might be wrong about this. Might be different. They tend to be the ones that are left feeling abandoned, while people with NPD, in order to avoid that feeling of abandonment and shame and worthlessness, they tend to abandon others first. They want to beat you to it so that they can feel like they're the ones that are still maintaining their value. Because both tend to feel like they're lacking value, sometimes even completely, if they are left. Both struggle with not having been tended to emotionally and or psychologically in their upbringing. So for me, I'm pretty sensitive. I'm pretty opposite to Meat over here. I've been pretty emotional, and I've been heavily abused for it, funnily enough, for most of my life. So that's something I
Okay.
struggle with.
Okay. So, in you guys' friendship, how often would you guys say you have a big disagreement? And also, when you do have a disagreement, how cautious are you guys with what you say to each other?
This is very funny. We don't really have a lot
Yeah,
of like disagreements, do we? We just miscommunicate a lot.
not really.
We
We've
Okay.
just
had
do that
very few,
thing.
and yeah, a lot of the time because like I feel like we're both like interestingly enough, we're both easily angered when it comes to seeing a potential disagreement because I feel like for both of us, it's led to fights with
Mhm.
other people, like just misunderstanding or being like miscommunicating. It's funny though because both of us have autism, and so a lot of the time when we're disagreeing, like 90% of the time, it turns out we both agree. We're just expressing it differently.
Okay.
So we both end up just feeling really dumb. But yeah, that's
Okay.
it.
So, the last question I have as far as covering the friendship topic, do you guys think that people who don't have NPD can develop good long-term relationships or friendship with people who are diagnosed with NDP or other cluster B traits? Why or why not?
I feel like he'd have more insight on this. You can go ahead first.
Yes, I do. If accountability is maintained,
Okay.
Hmm.
accountability has to be maintained, and you have to have the person with NPD has to be willing to like work on themselves. Has to be willing to like
Oh,
hold
absolutely.
themselves
Yeah.
accountable. If they're not, then they will continue to just hide things from you anyway. They'll see what they can get away with. They'll keep trying to push and push and push and see what they can get away with. See what really is the line. What is that final line? It will keep being pushed unless there's accountability and unless there's transparency. It'll continue.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's a lot of interesting things about this. Like I remember when looking into statistics and the data on like narcissists like checking into therapy. There's like a small number from what I recall of the ones that actually stay, but of those people that stay, 53% of them, if I remember correctly, actually do exhibit pretty significant change over a long period of time. It is important to note that a lot of people in unhealthy relationships with suspected or outright narcissists do get those promises after fights and fallouts that like, oh, I'll get into therapy, I'll change myself, but they come back only to be entrapped in the relationship long term because those people don't end up looking for the actual change. They're like, oh, I got the promise, I can go back now. That's something to look out for. Other than that, it is possible to maintain good relationships with them. It just tends to be the case that with a lot of the ones that are less willing to work on themselves, the closer you are to them, the more mistreated you're going to be because, they seem to hate to feel like they're being read or seen more. That's why a lot of the time their relationships dwindle into, that's why like there's a whole pattern of love bomb, devalue, discard. It dwindles after the honeymoon phase and they start being like, oh, you're actually getting close to me. I hate that. There has to be something wrong with you.
Yeah.
And especially with the defense mechanism in the narcissistic person's brain, when they mistreat somebody, a lot of the time they feel a semblance of shame and regret and remorse. It's quickly corrected by their brain in a way to defend themselves oh, no, that person did something that made me treat them that way. I had to act that way. It only makes sense that I said that or did that. And so it's easy for them to continue with that behavior until they keep falling apart, making mistakes. It's just a mess.
Okay, that was very interesting. Yeah, I didn't fully know that what you were saying about that, but yeah, I just wanna. Okay, so now guys, I wanna get into more on your thoughts on NPD in general, and then like talking about society, NPD with pop culture and entertainment. So let me ask you guys first, just to see where your mind is at. When you guys hear the word empathy or emotions, what are some thoughts or words that come to your mind?
I would say anyone can have empathy, but
Yeah.
sympathy is exclusive to those that can feel it.
Okay.
Empathy is just the understanding of how someone feels. If you can understand how they feel, if you can identify it, you can reason with why they're upset. You can understand why somebody is feeling the way that they're feeling. From you can engage in empathy. You can engage in the social practice of empathy. Sympathy is something that one has to feel. You have to feel it. So people like me can have empathy. We can go, damn, that's rough. That sucks. Like that must be tough. But we can't actually feel like sympathy towards that. We can't go, oh wow, that makes me feel really sad.
It's like a lack of compassion.
I'm really sorry to hear that. That's a little bit of a different ballpark. But empathy, anyone can manage it. Is if you can. It's just something you have to actively manage. Like you have to go like, damn, I can understand that. But if you don't care about them, you don't care that they're upset. You don't have empathy at all. So I feel like empathy is not exclusively human, therefore it is not particularly unique.
Okay.
I'll say that.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, sympathy is not uniquely human. I'd say empathy is pretty uniquely human to an extent.
Okay, what do you think, Joey, when you hear the word empathy or
I
emotions?
agree with everything he said. It's just the fact that I don't know, I guess I've been heavily abused by my family for most, if not all, of my life, and I still struggle with it to a much lesser degree, trying to get out of the situation.
Mm-hmm.
I've had a lot of different periods of time over the years, my teenage years, where I would try to fix my relationship with both my father and my sister, to both of them being like pretty much my main abusers in the past, both of them having NPD, most likely. And I will say, as much as I would encourage sympathy for people with NPD, I'd encourage it at like arm's length or from a safe
Yeah.
distance, because a lot of the time, um, not only is it an important and kind of brutal lesson to learn that the responsibility of mending a broken relationship shouldn't fall on the victim, but also a lot of the time, the moment you start trying to connect with them on a deeper level, even if they do have, pure intentions as well, similarly to you, those maladaptive pathologies that they have
Mm-hmm.
can be way more often overpowering, and you're gonna get hurt again and again and again trying to fix those relationships. So just be as safe as possible, and don't think, no matter how many precautions you take, that you're being obsessive. With people like this, you're not being obsessive. You're being smart.
Okay. Let's see, Joey. What are some traits of NPD that you've like what are some signs, I guess, basically, like, are the exact traits of someone with NPD in your perspective, and then meet what traits do you like, I guess you could list off that you just deal with, you know?
Mm.
Wait, do you mean like if I might have any NPD traits? Is that what
No,
you're asking?
oh no, I'm sorry. Like, you guys have, I mean, like, you guys different perspective with like dealing with NPD traits specifically. So, like if you research the symptoms or the traits of NPD, and based on you guys' perspectives.
What are some symptoms that you've observed in people with narcissistic personality disorder?
Thank
That
you.
might
There
be
you
less
go.
talked about. That might be less talked about. Is that what you're
Yeah,
saying?
there might be other less talked about, discussed, or like just in
Oh,
general.
yeah.
Cause there's some people that may have friends, family that think, oh well, this person might have traits, or they might be narcissistic, but I
Oh,
don't know.
I know an interesting one. I know an interesting one.
Okay.
The severe. This is more emotional narcissists, although the emotional narcissists are the majority, it seems. The extreme uh, way that they feel about boredom. Seemingly, a lot of them feel like boredom is pretty much hellish agony for them. It seems, and they tend to like to self-destruct sometimes, maybe even on a whim, because they like to feel not only a rush, in like almost a really young adolescent type of way,
Mhm.
but also to have that feeling of like, oh no, it's kind of like a reminder to themselves that, hey, I have control. I can even destroy everything if I want. So
Hmm.
that's why a lot of the time they may be like getting into a bunch of jobs and then leaving the job, no matter how amazing the pay or like the opportunity is. That's why they may be like destroying good bonds and relationships for no seemingly like solid reason. That's why like even sometimes like if they're mending a relationship with someone and they're not even the one putting in the most amount of effort, they may seem like they start fighting with you randomly. That's like that. I at least from my deduction, which might be wrong again,
Mhm.
um, it seems to be one of the reasons why they might blow up in your face at random sometimes.
Okay.
That's an interesting one, in my opinion. What do you have to say, Meat?
I'd say probably some of the things that I have a difficult time with are not being vindictive, not being incredibly vindictive and mean, just outwardly mean. I would struggle terribly in, like, say, a customer service job of anything of the sort.
Yeah.
Um, it is. It's also very difficult to not essentially look down on people. It's hard to not look down on people sometimes. I find myself a lot just taking a silent breath to myself, looking around me and going, "Good Lord Almighty, you people are stupid. Holy Hannah!" Like,
Can I ask you something
and
about
that's
that?
difficult sometimes. It's
Can I ask you something about that?
yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead,
do
Joey.
you like let's say, I don't know, do you feel like part of that to any extent is self-victimization? Like, I need to correct this, I'm so angry, I have to fix this, these people are horrible, like, and
Well,
like,
it's kind of
'cause a lot of narcissists self-victimize pretty often, so that's why I'm wondering.
it's like watching. So you know when you go into an animal shelter and you see how all the dogs kind of look somewhat miserable and like they're living but barely. That's how it feels. Like I feel like I'm walking into an animal shelter and looking at a bunch of confused, miserable, dumb animals that need adoption, that need helping,
Okay, so
that
the
need
general
like that need guidance, and it's like, oh no, what am I looking at? What's going on here? What are you all doing? What do you
yeah, so
do?
you feel like you're smarter than everybody, you're superior in that way.
Not smarter, just like do things less inconveniently. Like I just kind of baffled
You
about the way the
feel,
world is built around me, kind of.
yeah.
Because there's so
So
many
I'm
more
trying.
simplistic ways to do things that it just I can't. It makes me unreasonably
I mean,
angry how
okay.
complicated some things are made that don't need to
I
be that
I kind of
complicated.
agree with that, but I'm trying to connect it to something like that would make more. Okay. I was gonna ask, does that mean like you feel like you're the most competent and in control person around? Like, is that
Occasionally, a lot of the time, yes. A
okay?
lot
That
of
makes
the time,
sense. Yeah,
yes.
that makes sense.
Okay,
That's all I want to ask.
okay. Well, me based on what you said there, you kind of answered this, but so basically, is that kind of like when you made that example about like kind of not being superior, but like just seeing everyone like a little lower than? Would you say? Would you say is that how you feel
I
day to
wouldn't
day,
even
basically basis?
I wouldn't even say lower than. It's like watching a documentary, an animal documentary in real life. I do not view myself as like a person in the same way that everybody else is.
Mm-hmm.
I
Hmm.
view the rest of the human population through the scope of like an alien biologist that is observing the human population and seeing how
Okay.
they are on the social level. I look at us the way like humans. I look at us human people the way I look at other great apes because at the end of the day, that's what we are, and I include myself in that, just not as often. I don't really lump myself in majorities often, but I do in fact have a preference for referring to myself within my ape culture, as it is what it is. At the end of the
Okay.
day, we're apes. It's how it is.
Yeah,
We can't escape it.
that speaks to your inherent sense of self-differentiation, but at the same time, it is important to know with like the her asking about like, oh, do you feel higher? Hierarchical thinking is a pretty big one with NPD. That's a pretty big symptom. I don't know if it's big with BPD. I don't. I'm not as knowledgeable about BPD personally, but
Okay.
we've had conversations about this where like both Meat and I kind of view everyone around us as like either being lower, higher, or equal to us.
Yup.
Okay.
Uh, yeah. I mean, personally, I feel like a lot of people out there, if not most people, are higher than me, above me. But it's kind of like it's kind of interesting. Like with people with BPD and NPD, it's like a really special feeling when you find a friend or like a partner in any way, because that's like some of the few rare moments that you find an equal, and
Okay.
that's like oftentimes what you're looking for the most. So yeah.
Okay. So some might describe a person who hides themselves until they don't get the satisfaction or the results they have wanted as a narcissistic mask. Do you both believe that's true?
That's just one trait that could or couldn't apply, or like that could apply, that could imply someone is narcissistic. You
Okay.
Yup.
can't like diagnose basically just off one symptom like that.
Okay.
That's all.
Okay. Do you think society views narcissism correctly, or could there be any additional perspectives used to help others gain better awareness?
Um, it's interesting because with a lot of clinicians and a lot of like the most popular content online about um a lot of it centers around how to help people avoid or get out of abusive relationships, which is good, but that does lead to a lot of oversimplification that makes narcissistic people seem like black and white supervillains, which
Mm.
is pretty sad, especially with how
Oh
much they
yeah,
already
like
suffer.
abusive
Yeah.
villains.
Beyond that, it does feel like oftentimes our current capitalistic and like overly celebrity obsessed culture does promote and incentivize narcissism, whether pathological or just behavioral.
True.
Um, but also, a lot of the groups of people with NPD that I could find online, I get their intentions are good. They want to destigmatize a lot of things, but it does feel like sometimes they overly self victimize to the point of potentially undermining pretty egregious behaviors and tendencies that people
Okay.
like that might have. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Meat.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on that or?
I agree. I think that there is people are very quick to throw out the word narcissist. Because I think that like anyone can be called a narcissist. You can be acting narcissistically at any point, but it's different than actually like having a disorder. It's a
Right.
super different
Yeah.
ballpark, and I think there needs to be more separation between the two because you'll get people getting like lambasted online over like narcissistic tendencies when they're just like self-indulgently posting because they think they look good, or they're like posting audios on like
Yeah.
TikTok or Instagram or something, and someone comes in and insults them, and it's usually women that get insulted like that, which is kind of foul.
Mm-hmm.
But just posting pictures and just for enjoying themselves, and they're like lambasted for it, and that is totally different. Like self-indulgence is very different from narcissism, and I think there needs to be a better distinction.
Okay.
It's also like I will say an interesting thing real quick. Not only is it funny because how he said because he said women are usually the ones that like get lambasted for that because in the statistics that we know of at the moment, it seems like 70 to 80% of narcissists are men, 20 to 30 are women,
Hmm.
and also what was I gonna say? Sorry. It's a thing that I forgot who I talked about this with a while back, but I came to this conclusion. A lot of people see narcissistic people as like these like bigger figures just going around like stomping on others with a crown on their head, like smiling and giggling.
Mm-hmm.
That's not exactly how the need for constant admiration works. The way you have to imagine it is a deathly ill patient in a hospital bed hooked up to an IV of constant admiration.
Yeah,
Otherwise,
Mm.
they implode.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. But
Very fragile egos and sense of self,
mm,
basically.
okay. So, as far as when it comes to pop culture and entertainment, like you guys briefly mentioned there, what are some TV show or movie characters do you think showcase a great job of like describing what NPD is?
Oh, you go ahead. I have to think
dead
about this.
eye. Oh, Homelander.
Oh yeah. Oh,
Homelander.
absolutely.
Homelander's fantastic. Homelander's a
Did you
great.
say I'm sorry, Homelander?
Homelander for
Yeah.
the boys. He's good. He's good. He's good juice. Good soup.
Yeah. It's really funny too because he's one.
He's such a ween.
Oh,
He's such a doink.
people worship him. It's so funny. Okay.
That's
I
so
can't think of
stupid. I
any.
know. It's like
I
it's the
can't think
Patrick
of
Bateman of
any
it's so
exact
bad. It's so
like
bad.
I can't think of any exact examples at the moment, like anyone I could talk about in depth. But it is pretty notable. Like for example, a lot of like the Sigma male characters online are usually people that like are usually characters that are written specifically to be deconstructed, criticized, and shown like what the problem with them is.
Okay.
But then because of the fact that like with things like NPD and other disorders and maladaptive behaviors, people tend to neglect their inner world and hyperfocus on the outer world, which tends to lead to a constant need for like more success, more like stomping on others, more of this, more of that. And that leads a lot of like people who aren't paying enough attention to their media to think, oh, this guy gets everything he wants. He's a go-getter. He's actually going out there. He's being a real man. He's being a great like he's being a really capable person. And so it leads to unhealthy idolization and it
Mm,
leads to worse people out there. It's terrible.
Okay. So lastly on this topic, I'll just ask you guys, do you believe there is a bridge bringing people who don't have MPD? Wait, well, let me ask it like this. Do you guys believe that there is like a bridge that is bringing people who do and don't have MPD together, or you feel like there's more of a line that's kind of dividing people who do and don't have NPD? As far as like, do you think that people who do and don't have NPD are like coming together more with awareness, or do you feel like it's still divided and people still need to be educated more in order to build you
It's
know
still highly divided, especially because
okay.
even with like years of still have a lot of contradictory a lot of unclear answers to pretty pertinent questions. It's just one of those disorders that sadly, for now, we don't have enough solid information about. And until that changes, we're going to still be struggling. Beyond that, I think we already touched on this earlier. Like, Meat
Okay.
talked about that more in depth than I did, because
Right.
in terms of the accountability and I don't know, just openness, I guess. Just open it. Just do as Meat does, like warn people basically, no matter how good you are about your NPD and your maladaptive behaviors. Just tell people, hey, this might be an issue, or you might find me disagreeable, undesirable. I,
Okay.
I have this.
So
That's
basically
all.
building transparency, like saying, "Hey, I'm this," and
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Okay, so lastly, before ending this conversation, I just want to get you guys to like give some advice to others who want to be more educated on this. So I would say, what advice do you guys have for those who are in a toxic situation with someone who they think have NPD or NPD traits and they're in a dark place? Like, what can they do?
Maybe Meat can say something about this. So you should go first.
Very first thing you should do is build a healthy support network in private if you're able to do so. And that's reaching out to
Yeah.
friends, reaching out to family, reaching out to extended family, reaching out to resources in your area, a shelter if you are living with somebody, a women's shelter if you are a woman or a queer person, if you are able to vacate, to do so and to make as little known of it as possible.
Hmm.
And another thing you can do, if you're not in any physical danger and you're actively looking to better a relationship, then you should do so from a distance. You should still
Hmm.
leave. You should still back off. Take that
Mm-hmm.
space for yourself, reevaluate, protect yourself first. Do
Right.
not let them guilt trip you. Do not let them whine and cry and moan and blame you. Do not let yourself be backed into a corner where you are made to react and then blamed for reacting.
That's
Because,
reactive abuse, baby.
yeah,
Pretty common.
and if you see something, say something. Stand up for other people that you feel like they're in a bad
Yeah.
relationship. Be a support network for other people. If you hear someone being abused, you say something. Pull them aside.
Yeah.
Say something. Like check
It's
on them. Make sure they're okay. Like it's what people do. It's what humans need to do. And it's
it's
again, it's why I'm
also
a person. If you see something, say something. That way, people like
it's
me won't be jerks to you if you see something and say something.
it's also another important thing. Trauma is pretty physical as well. It does get stored in your actual nervous system, and a lot of the time, not only will your intuition technically grow stronger and more precise the more you go through these experiences with people, you can tell a little easier after every time who might be a danger, who might not be. But specifically with romantic relationships, since the idea is so sensationalized that like romance is like really intense and true love is really intense and passionate and like magical, and it's like a whole mess going on inside you. You know, a lot of the time in real life, in the real world, that tends to be your nervous system warning you, hey, we've been through this before, I'm terrified, get out of here, get away from this person.
Right.
um and also just be as self-aware as possible. Check your own cycles of relationships, platonic, romantic, familial, whatever. Be pretty aware of your own boundaries, what you allow and what you don't allow, and what any of these things lead to with you. Just be as self-aware as possible. Be cautious.
Okay. So on the other side of the I would say on the other side of the spectrum, what advice do you guys for people who have NPD and they're self-aware but they don't feel welcomed by many?
I think Meat can say like way more insightful things about.
You're the best advice I can give for you is to take the plunge, find a support network, and get help. It's
Okay.
gonna suck. You're gonna feel like a child that's being talked down to and degraded, and like your whole everything you've been doing is wrong. And to you, yeah, it's gonna feel wrong. It's gonna feel really wrong. You're gonna be frustrated, irritated the first few times you go in. You're probably gonna think whoever you go in to see is just absolutely full of it and blowing it up your arse. But if you just like chill out and actually listen to what they're saying, it is a good benefit. Another advice I can have for you is use your use what you got as a positive. You're a
Right.
menace to society. Use it well. Use it to afflict
Hmm.
those that deserve it and not those that
Yeah.
don't. If you're gonna harm people that hurt the innocent, not people that
Mm,
are innocent.
yeah. Absolutely. I don't have much to say about this guy. I just basically agree wholeheartedly with what he said right there.
Okay. Well, thank you guys. This has been amazing conversation, and I hope you guys like enjoyed the questions. I know like
Yeah. Cool.
Oh
there's
yeah.
like there's so many angles you can go with just talking about NPD and mental health in general, but these were just some like top level layered questions. But I hope you guys enjoy this conversation. I definitely enjoy like learning and talking to you guys. So
I think it
um
was really fun.
yeah, so
Same.
any final thoughts, or is there anything else people should know about NPD that many don't know?
Um, a lot of the time they're really not funny people.
Yeah.
That's something. That's just something I've noticed. Funnily enough, I think Meat is like the only out of the 6 narcissists I've known closely in my life. He's been the only one with a good sense of humor. I don't know why. I don't know what data there is or isn't about that. I just find that to be a funny detail. Have
And
fun
then
with
they
that.
can't draw that too. You said something about that. That
Oh
was
yeah.
I
Oh
had
yeah.
to like.
One last thing. Yeah, about that. My dad, sorry, it's just one last detail I love.
Mm-hmm.
My dad used to do poetry, and like same with my
Oh
sister, and
god, yeah.
two two of my exes and one narcissistic best friend did art, like visual art, and even like one person that led a narcissist group chat I was in. Um, with the poetry from like my dad and my sister, it was always pretty amateurish, no matter how long they'd been doing it for. And funnily enough, to put it simply, it was easily summarized to just like, man, look how sad I am because I see through everything. I know everything so much better than others. And with the visual arts people with NPD, they were often extremely good at like replicating art and or
Mm.
referencing like struggled like hell to make their own stylized artwork.
Hmm.
So that's just
Interesting.
interesting.
Yeah, it is
Yeah,
interesting. Well,
that's all.
thank you so much, guys. I feel that a lot of people could just learn just off of this. Like, wait, it's been an hour, right? Okay, so it's been
Mhm.
an hour of us conversating. I just feel like even with the hour could be short to many people, but you guys mentioned so many great things that people can be more informed on. And so once again, I just want to thank you guys because a lot of people are kind of nervous or shy to like actually speak up. Whenever I offer them the opportunity to come on the video conversation video, because I know that it takes a lot to just be able to just go out there and say what you want and be posted for everyone around the world to see.
Struggling financially at the moment. I have an Instagram I post art on, and my commissions are open. It's
Okay, sure.
Joey BW02.
Mm,
Yeah,
I'll put them in the
I'll check it
description.
out.
Or if you have any like NPD links that people could be more informed about um, anything there.
Um,
Okay.
as I said earlier, look into as many sources on every single question you have. Yeah,
Okay.
I don't know if it would be wise to send in like specific sources. That's all.
Okay, guys. Well, thank you for those who are watching today. Make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe if you're new. If you like content such as this, and guys, I'll see you in the next one. Take care.
See ya.